Final Fantasy VII is a game I've had my eye on for quite some time. I mean, for all my years as a gamer, I've always heard such wonderful things about it. Final Fantasy VII is one of those games that everybody puts on some unreachably high pedestal, along with other god-tier games like Ocarina of Time, Half-Life, and Mass Effect. It's one of those games that you see on every top 10 list. Top 10 fantasy games of all time. Top 10 RPGs of all time. Top 10 video games of all time. Final Fantasy VII is actually my first Final Fantasy game. It's far from being my first RPG, or even fantasy JRPG, but 7 is my first look into the illustrious Final Fantasy franchise. So, how is the game really? Does it deserve all the praise that it gets? Is it truly one of the best games of all time? No. FF7 is hands down the most overrated game I've ever played. It's not necessarily bad, it's just unbearably mediocre. I've played so many games that are like FF7, except better. You want an adventure game with an epic story? Play Ocarina of Time. You want a well-written game with likable characters? Play Phoenix Wright. You want a medieval fantasy JRPG? Play Bravely Default. There is not a single reason for me to recommend Final Fantasy VII to you. There is hardly a single thing that I can praise Final Fantasy VII for doing. First of all, the graphics are horrendous, and I don't know what this game's excuse is because Final Fantasy IX and Metal Gear Solid were both on the same system, and in those games, at least the characters look like people. The gameplay is dull and tedious. It's hard to control since the directional inputs are always skewed and nothing interesting ever happens gameplay-wise. Final Fantasy VII is a game of what do I do next? The answer is usually as simple as talk to this guy, or look at this object, or go to this place, and then the story moves on. The battles are a refreshing distraction from the tedium, but they're still not very fun. Unlike most JRPGs, FF7 opts not to utilize the traditional turn-based combat system. Instead, the battles are dependent upon a time gauge at the side of your screen. When the time gauge fills, you're allowed to make a move, but until then you're just a sitting duck. The time gauge is a stupid gameplay mechanic because it prevents you from fighting at your own pace. It made me feel rushed all the time. I didn't have time to plan out my strategy or course of action because I was focused on making my move before the enemy had time to attack. In this game, due to the time gauge, it is actually possible for the enemy to attack an indeterminate amount of times in just one turn. Consequentially, it is possible for you to lose a battle in just one turn without ever having made any move at all. I will give the game credit for adding some spice with its customizable materia system, which allows you to choose which spells to equip on each of your teammates, but I've definitely seen other JRPGs which do a way better job of allowing you to customize your fighting style. Hint hint, Bravely Default is awesome in this department. Now, as for this game's story, I have really mixed feelings about it. On one hand, it sucks, but on the other hand, it's this game's best trait. A lot of people like to praise this game for its epic story. I can't fully agree with this notion. For one thing, the characters' writing is really poor. None of them speak like real people, and they often say really baffling things that don't make any sense in the context of the dialogue. It's especially noticeable when you're talking to Sephiroth. He tries to look all cunning and intimidating, but it's impossible to take him seriously because he just acts so silly. Really, that's all this game's story is, in a nutshell. It tries to take itself too seriously, but it backfires because it's just so weird and nonsensical and annoying. After spending 50 hours of my own free time playing Final Fantasy VII, there is only one positive thing I can say about it, and that would be that every once in a while, this game has some really creative ideas, but the problem is that these creative ideas are too few and far between. This game truly has its moments of greatness. During some cutscenes, there were some plot twists that gave me chills or made me think, no freaking way is this really happening. There are seriously some awesome moments to be found in FF7's story, but that's the problem. They're just moments which are separated by long, uneventful periods of boredom and monotony. This game is a 50-hour bore which does barely anything remarkable. There was only a handful of times when I was actually enjoying myself, and that's when the crazy plot twists were revealed. Seriously, whoever wrote this story had some pretty innovative ideas, but it's a shame to me that they were drowned out by the poor writing, the bad graphics, and the uninteresting gameplay. For most of my experience, playing this game felt like a chore, and I often found myself procrastinating because there are so many better ways I could have been spending my time. I do not recommend playing Final Fantasy VII. There are countless other games which are similar but simply better. If you're searching for a fantasy JRPG with an epic story, an engaging battle system, and well-written characters, then just play Bravely Default on the 3DS. I was tempted to rate FF7 7 out of 10 just for the joke, but no, this game doesn't deserve a 7 out of 10. I rate Final Fantasy VII 5.5 out of 10 because it's just above average. Most of the experience was mediocre, but there were occasional moments when I was actually having fun. All things considered, there's hardly any reason that most people should play FF7 because there are just so many better games out there. However, I'll leave on this note. I'm eagerly awaiting the FF7 remake because I have a good feeling it'll fix my complaints about the original version. With better graphics, better writing, and better controls, I actually have confidence that the remake will bring out 7's full potential, and the story will probably be much more fleshed out and enjoyable. With everything having been said, I hope you enjoyed my review. If you have any thoughts or opinions you'd like to share, please let me know in the comments below. I do read all my comments, and I enjoy hearing what others have to say. I'll see you guys in the next video, so for now, Illusion signing out. By the way, I know it might sound weird, but Cid was the only character in this game that I actually liked. Cloud is too edgy, Barret is a moron, Eris is literally an alien, and Tifa is kind of just Cloud's emotional support, but Cid actually has some character to him. He does some pretty heroic stuff, and he's there for some of the coolest scenes in the game. I got chills every time they played his theme.